30 years ago this year that I went to Moscow as a student. And the thing that struck me then was I was expecting a massive cultural difference. And obviously, to an extent, superficially, it was a very different environment from London, where I'm from. But at the same time, I found that on a sort of personal level, there were enough similar traits, character traits, between Russians and Brits, as far as I'm concerned anyway, that helped kind of ease the transition. And now, 30 years down the line, I feel at home here, obviously, because I've been here a long time, but I'm not sure whether I've changed or whether the environment around me has changed. It's very difficult to tell after such a long period.
Because, talking to some people, you would think that, oh, Russians and Brits are so vastly different. So what were the traits that you noticed that struck you as similar?
I think with the Brits and the Russians, what we tend to do, we have an idea of ourselves, how a British person should project himself, or a Russian has the same thing. But it's quite a fragile sort of shell that we put around ourselves. And when you break through that shell, we're actually very similar. It's the thing that got me, as I said, when I first came here, was I heard lots of jokes from my newfound Russian friends. And I would hear a joke and I thought, I know that joke from English. So it's almost independently, we'd thought up the same humorous situations. The Russians have the phrase, in every joke there is a piece of truth, or sometimes say in every joke there's a bit of a joke. From both sides, we have this idea of how we should project ourselves and how we really are. When I think a British person and a Russian person, when they realise that they're both pretending to be something else, that's when the sort of the proper connection takes place.
I did notice the shell thing when I lived in the UK. There's another comparison used in the cross-cultural communication theory, like peaches and coconut cultures. Peaches are very soft on the outside, and they're friendly, smiley, like, for example, our American friends are. But then there is a hard side. Whereas the coconuts, which I think Russians and Brits fit in perfectly, maybe the Japanese as well, because I lived in Japan and I see a lot of similarities between English, the Japanese, and Russians, in a different way to what you just mentioned, but still. So yeah, there's this coconut shell, the hard shell on the surface. It takes a while to break through, but once you've cracked the shell, you start really enjoying each other and a relationship that can develop.
We're arrogant and self-effacing at the same time. We don't want to shout about how successful or clever we are. We'd rather, because we think it's going to be obvious anyway. And if we start saying, I've done all this, I've done that, if we hear someone say that, our instant suspicion, and this is certainly the case with Russians, I think anyway, if we start hearing someone say how successful they are, we are immediately suspicious that they're probably not successful and they're trying to overcompensate. The Americans don't have any hang up about that at all. They take people as they present themselves. Probably a simpler way to do things. But we would rather not boast, and we would certainly rather not overpromise.
Here you would notice that people rarely compliment each other, rarely praise each other. In the Russian culture, if nobody says anything bad to you, if you don't receive any negative feedback, then you're fine and you're doing a great job.
I've had in my career in Russia, I have run Russian teams. I remember the first, this was going back 15 years now, when I was about to take over the running of an office here in St. Petersburg. I had still have a Russian friend in Moscow, probably about getting on for 10 years older than me, and he's held management positions as well. And his advice to me was, Chris, first thing you're going to do, first week, you got to single someone out in your team and basically make them cry. Things have moved on, I think, a little bit. But this was still the idea. This is how you get a team working, is you crack the whip. You never compliment people, because as soon as people hear a compliment, they start to relax. They think they're the bee's knees. They're they're not going to work hard anymore. You have to rule with fear. I still see that now. I work pretty much in a sort of a freelance capacity, so there are companies that I work with rather than for, but I do spend time in their offices. And yes, some of them, there is still that culture. As you said very, very well, the employees are thinking, if I'm not being criticized, then I'm obviously doing a good job. This concept of soft skills in sort of corporate management speak, it's almost impossible to get that across in Russian. How do you say soft skills in Russian? Because in Russian, the idea of softness is weakness. When everyone is incentivized by fear of doing things wrong rather than the reward of doing things right, I think it gets to the case where even the director at the top of this little pyramid, they also have a certain fear of showing their own soft side. So everyone becomes so rigid in their structure. I think that, yes, probably it's an idea that they do need to sort of lighten up a little bit, and have an inclusive office. It's very interesting if you look on any of the sort of corporate social media. A lot of the big Russian companies, you look at their feeds, and it's all about, we value our people, and our people are the most important things to us, and they have corporate days, and it's so they're getting the idea. I don't know how much it is purely superficial and lip service. I did a very interesting Zoom seminar the other day about working in the new normal, the COVID reality. And one of our speakers was an HR director of a big Russian company in the metals industry. And they said one of the things they did, because they couldn't meet anymore, because they couldn't go to the office all at the same time, they started doing these kind of business breakfasts with the senior management of the company, so that everyone would be sat like you and me, but they'd be sat in their kitchens having coffee in the morning, and they'd have sort of the deputy CEO in his kitchen having his coffee, and they could have a sort of and they said it was so popular as a thing. And you wouldn't think this is, as I say, this is not a sort of touchy-feely marketing company. This is a steel maker. And they had this idea to do this, and they liked it. So it's maybe the ice has shifted, as they say.
A lot of young Russians, they would prefer working for an international company for the reasons that you mentioned earlier, because of the atmosphere, because of how people are valued there. What do you think of them? What do you think of the people who are in their early 20s?
This is a new generation, which without the cultural baggage of the people before them. If we're talking about the 20-somethings now, the millennials, this is the first generation who have no direct experience of the Soviet Union. So they have grown up in a sometimes chaotic, but a sort of a market economy, and they've grown up without having this "we are building communism" kind of aspect to their lives. I don't know if it's the case still, but it's certainly 10 years ago, it was a prestige thing that you were working for an international company, because they only take the best of the best. So the idea was, if you were working for an international company, therefore you were a talented, capable person, because they only took people at your level, kind of thing. International companies, they were also on a learning curve coming to work to operate in Russia, but they also already had the idea of making themselves, developing their employer brand, so that they would naturally attract the best candidates. I would say yes, that the new generation is different. They are expecting as well, I think, that the Russian companies they will work with will have the same kind of culture as an international company. Having an old Russian in quotes culture isn't good enough.